Hey Downtown Art Walk, this is Jeremy here to present our featured artist for the month of April, Morley. I am Morley is the tag name. LA-based street artist from Iowa. He's hitting the ground running. Text-based art.
And when I moved out to New York, I went to school as a screenwriting major, actually. And it was the first time getting out there that I'd ever seen anything anybody could call street art. Before that, it was just curse words carved into bathroom stall doors and that kind of a thing. So when I got out there and started seeing the work of Shepard Fairey and an artist named Neckface and all of the other great New York-based street artists, it really changed my entire perspective on what art could be and how I could get across creative expression. For me, a big thing about being a screenwriting major specifically was that there was a lot of layers to getting your work to the audience. A lot of permission that's needed for someone to just see what you're trying to express. And so for me, when I started seeing street art out in New York, it was a revelation, because it was creating a piece of art and taking it to the audience, as opposed to hoping the audience shows up. And then when I moved out here, it started to evolve. I started wanting to go bigger because people don't really ride the subway as much. A lot more people drive cars, and so I thought, I want something that could be seen driving down the street at 30 miles an hour. So that's when I started using the posters. It wasn't enough to just have text just out there. I needed to have something that connected with people, that created a sort of, I guess for lack of a better word, a trademark. I thought, okay, well, what would be something that could be visually, could catch people's eye and would help me sort of stand by the words in a literal way as opposed to just a figurative one. And I thought, why not just a drawing of me? A lot of street artists, it's very based on their anonymity. It's very based on on an image that they create that's kind of, a myth in a way. I mean, Banksy, for example, is one who, he kind of exists on the idea of who he is. And that's great, but for me, I thought what I really would like is to create more of a relationship that people could say, okay, this isn't the coolest guy in the world. This is a kind of a dopey looking guy in glasses, and feel a connection on a more intimate level.
What do you feel your most powerful piece has been throughout your career as a street artist?
I don't really know if my work is so great that without the context that it exists within, for example, one of my favorite ones was one that just says, "I promise you, you're not just a waitress." And without the context of a person who may be a waitress walking by that and seeing it really big on a wall in the middle of the city, and to see that, and to feel like maybe all I am though is just a waitress, to see that and to feel the sort of positive statement of like, I promise you, you're not just a waitress. Whether you're an actress or whether you're a rock star or whatever, the point is you're not just your job. You're not just what you're doing to pay your bills, Ultimately, a lot of what gives my work any kind of significance is what people bring to it themselves.
With your understanding of some of the street artists, where do you feel street art is going?
I think that for me, I guess I can only say where I'd like to see it go. I think where I'd like to see street art go is just continuing down more of an emotional-based, sort of direction. I think that the stuff that I connect to the most is the stuff that is a little bit more emotion-based, that is a little bit more relating to a person's personal struggle.
Where do you see your work being if it's not in the street? Or do you just like it being out in the open?
Again, I go back to just the context of the work. For me, a big thing is something that's said out in the open and in public is different than something that's said in the privacy of one's home, I think. And so to me, I feel like my work is most powerful when it's out in the open and when it's in public. And I think that, to me, the main reason I wanted it to make the book was because of the fact that I wanted to be able to allow people to see my work in the context that it was sort of intended for. So I enjoy the fact that now they can get the book and they can see all my pieces on the street, and they can keep the book in their house, you know, but they get to see it with the context that I think gives it its significance. For me, it was sort of an eye-opening experience when I did my first gallery. Realized that, like, some of the statements I was making, like, for example, I promise you you're not just a waitress, and thinking, all of a sudden it hit me, I was like, wow, I don't think many waitresses could afford to buy this piece as it is. And there was a certain amount of guilt that came with that, because I was like, wow, you know, who am I making this art for, you know? So that's why, you know, it was just a further sort of motivation to make the book, so that, you know, I could, again, return it to the, you know, and allow the people that might connect with something but maybe not be able to afford it to be able to get at it, you know.
For aspiring artists, street artists who are looking to do, you know, exactly what you're doing, plus if they can, what's the advice that you would give them?
Well, my first piece of advice is always be smart. I think that a lot of potential street artists should check out the laws and the legal ramifications of what they're doing. So that's always the first and foremost thing. And then secondly, I would say it's vital to find a voice, to find something that, you know, that makes you unique. I mean, a lot of street artists, the sort of the big question, I guess, is what makes a street artist think that they deserve to put their work up where people have to see it, you know? And I would ask the same questions of any advertiser. You know, what gives them the right to sort of assault us visually with their billboards and their you know, advertisements? And obviously the answer to that is basically the street artist has the ego to say, I decided that my stuff was worth being put up on the street. I decided that, you know, what I was doing was important enough to possibly risk my freedom for it. And I think that that's a responsibility that a lot of street artists should take more seriously and say, okay, well, what am I trying to say? Am I just trying to, you know, to just yell so that people can hear me, or am I trying to actually say something that that might add something interesting to the discussion, the visual discussion that is walking down the street every day? I am who I am, and I might not be the coolest guy in the world, but there's something that's sincere about what I'm trying to do. And I think that is something that I aspire to, is sincerity. And I think that that's something that makes me and my art what it is. So I guess my advice is find some way to speak from an honest and unique and interesting place.
So, I mean, where can people find your work?
Well, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so predominantly my posters are around Los Angeles. I try to go out to the different areas and neighborhoods, and I'm excited to go on a little mini tour with the book and hit some cities that I haven't hit before. Yeah, I mean, as far as you can find my work on, you know, my blog, if you don't live in Los Angeles or anything like that, my blog is iammorley.com, IAMMorley.com.